Nicole Howie, and I'm the statewide coordinator of the River Detectives program, and I also support the schools in the North Central CMA region. Welcome to another River Detectives webinar, an Ask the Expert webinar, adding to our suite of these webinars that you're able to watch on the River Detectives website to talk to some experts in the field of waterway and catchment management, and I suppose get us thinking about all of the different ways that we can be involved in helping our rivers and our catchments. Our topic for today is Wave of Change, and it's based on a beautiful, thought-provoking book by Meg Humphrys, who joins us today. It's about the changes happening to our water resources across the globe and what impact this is having on plants and animals and people and communities. And we're extremely fortunate to be joined by Meg today, who is the author and the illustrator of that book. Hi, Meg. Thanks for joining us.
Hi. Thank you for having me.
No problem. It's so good to have you. You're a sustainability advisor to the water sector, and this is your second book. So your first book, which also I do love, is When Water Lost Her Way, a beautiful book about water in all its different forms. And it's a great resource for teachers to discuss the water cycle and all of the different ways we value water and it's in our everyday lives. But I would like, before we begin at talking and chatting, I would like to acknowledge that I am recording this webinar on Jara country today and pay respects to elders past, present and emerging, and really acknowledge their rich and enduring connection to country and water and everything that they have done and continue to do to look after our land and our water resources. What country are you joining us from today?
From Bunurong or Bunurong country here on Millau on Phillip Island in Victoria.
Ah, lovely. And I've never heard the traditional name for Phillip Island, so that's lovely.
Yeah.
Great. Well, we were lucky to we've cast the net out to ask for questions from students who may have watched an online recording of your book, Wave of Change, because it's a very thought-provoking book, and we wanted not myself to be asking you questions, but the questions to come from students. So we have had a great response from Cornish College. Their grade 5 students participate in the River Detectives program. They've watched the online reading of the book. They've had a lot of thinking time and come up with some comments and questions and even some reflections and ideas to shape our chat today. They're really active River Detective School. They monitor the Paterson River in southeast Melbourne, and they've uploaded so much data this year. So they're a very active River Detective School. So they've got some insightful questions for you. So we will start with a question from Emmy and Tom about you, I suppose. First of all, Meg, how did you find your passion to work in the water industry?
Yes, I've been in the water industry now for probably 13 or 14 years, and it's such a special and amazing place to work because you get to work with community. Water is such an essential thing for our communities and to help and public health as well, from the management of wastewater in the urban environment too. So I came into water originally from geology, and then I worked in groundwater, so thinking about monitoring water resources under the ground. And then it was when I moved here to Millau on Phillip Island when I took a role in the urban water industry, and I have been there since, and I love it. It's really purpose-driven. We have to always think about community at the front of what we do, and there's a lot of sharing with other water utilities about how they're doing things and how we can do things better and be more sustainable in the future. So it's a really great alignment of value and also interest, because there's so much changing in the water industry and around the world with climate change and what we'll be talking about today. So it's a really exciting place to be, where we need to think about how we can do things differently to support a more sustainable future.
Yeah, and we can't live without water. So, you are talking about really important issues that do affect us all. So, and everyone has a say in that, don't they? Like an opinion and a right to be in that conversation. So Yeah, so it must be a very rewarding job. And what made you feel so connected specifically to water? Is there anything, that was a question from Tom, is there anything in your childhood or your later teenage years or study that led you to that connection with water?
Absolutely. I've always been really connected with water. We went to the coast a lot growing up, and I surf, and I've surfed all around the world, and it's a really big part of my life and a big part of why I wanted to move to Phillip Island. So being in water and not just sort of surfing waves, but also swimming and just being immersed in water has always been a really grounding place for me to go whenever I'm feeling down or when I'm whatever you're feeling, it's always there. And it's a beautiful getting back to sea country. It's such a special place for me, and it's really helped. And in the work that I do with the artwork, I love observing water too. So waves, but also clouds, and just what water's looking like in the landscape. So it's but also a really stimulating area in my work too. So it's bringing together that sort of more technical thinking along with the feeling that I get from being around water. So it's a really special thing to me. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, beautiful. That sounds lovely. And I suppose that's what we hope for all our students, isn't it? That they find that thing in nature, whether it's water or trees or birds or the land, or that makes meaning for them, and that's what drives their passion and their desire to look after it. So in terms of then morphing into the author-illustrator role, Alice and Ava, Alfred and Chloe, they all asked similar questions, wondering where that inspiration came from to become an author and illustrator and to write stories with that water theme.
Yeah, thank you.
You've probably already answered it in some ways.
Yes, I think the connection is a big one. But I think when I went through university and when I think about the trouble that we're in today with how where humanity is at, with how we've been managing our resources, a lot of that has come from separation and separation from nature. And I think, this is more of a grown-up thing. I think kids are well connected with nature and really understand that. But as you get older and in the world that we live in, and with progress and cities building up, and we're getting more and more removed from where food comes from, where water comes from, those sorts of connections and seasonal connection too. So what I love about water is we all have a relationship with water. We need to drink it. It's in our bodies. It's everywhere. And I thought this is such an important way to sort of help try and bring us back in connection, because part of that connection back to nature, back to ourselves, is part of the solution of how we can move forward. So when I thought about this book, I thought, well, water's a really great way to start, and creating a character out of water for me was a way to think about how we might start stitching back together these sort of separate parts. We also taught that in school, that there's this subject and that subject, and I feel that art and science, they're not actually so different. There's a lot of observation. There's so I think there's also this stitching back together that I hope and that I've tried to do in this book. And when I was at school, I also studied fine art through high school as well. So I always had this sort of art and science kind of thing going on inside, and it's nice to bring that together. And in story and in narrative, I thought it's a really powerful way to try and share a different way of thinking about things. And I'm probably more speaking for adults who might be reading these books to their children, because I think children get this more easily, and as you get older, we get conditioned in certain ways. So so this story is for children, but it's also for the grown-ups that read this book.
Absolutely. I think all picture storybooks are, aren't they? And having, you're right, having water as a character, just brings that next level of connection to, think of it not as an abstract concept, but it's something that's very much something that we have that very close relationship that deserves our respect and our thoughts, and just like any person. Yeah, beautiful. I love that. And specifically, so both of your books, as we know, have both been around water, which ties in beautifully with your passion and your skills and your interests. the first one we know was about water in all its forms, and then this one, Wave of Change, is more about climate change and the pressure on our water resources. So was that an easy choice for you? Why did you decide to choose climate change specifically as, and I suppose it is similar to what you've been talking about, to develop that relationship again and link people back to think about what's going on?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, yeah, that the first story about water was like setting the scene sort of thing. It was about uncovering the water cycle and understanding that through the narrative of the character and of water, and having a journey, which is in that first one, a personal journey. And I think in the second one, and I was kind of thinking about that after I finished the first one. I thought I want to take this to that next step. So hopefully as that reader grows older, they might start to understand a bit more complexity and start to think about, well, what water in the environment and how we are treating water and how we can be custodians of water and how we can think about the impact of water. And I think with climate change and with the transition that we are in at the moment to respond to and prepare for and develop resilience for climate change, a lot of focus is on energy transition, and that's absolutely a really important part of it. But and I see this a lot because I'm in the water industry too, but this is climate change is water change as well.
And I should say Sam and Toby asked that question because I'm sure they'll be watching to make sure their question was asked. And you've touched on this, but yeah, you're right. As an educator and as mums and as people, we do know that issue of climate change, it can be really tricky, and we have all lived through that recent time with fires and floods, and it's hard to watch and it's hard to experience, and you've got to try and process that. Was that a consideration for you in planning the book? I know that when I read it, I felt that sense of sadness, but I felt it was delivered in a really gentle way, and I did really feel like it finished with hope.
It was, and it is a tricky one. Yeah, I wanted to feel into it, and I guess a lot of that is, how it feels. It is sad, So I wanted to lean into the feelings around, because if we just stop and don't try not to feel anything, I think that is harmful, can be harmful as well. So it's about sort of creating that solidarity and feeling into what is changing and what is happening. But yeah, I really did want to leave that message of hope at the end, and it was very deliberate, having no answer or solution at the end. And my boys, when I first read it to them, they're like, "Mum, it can't finish there." I'm like, it does finish there, because we're working this out now together. And if I put something in 2 or 5 years' time, it's going to be out of date, because
that's true.
Us working this out,
still working it out as we go along.
And and there's so many great things going on. It's like I am inspired every day. I'm talking with people doing their best, working on this all the time. And I'm seeing really great shift and change and collaboration across, even from different areas, from consultants to water utility members. Everyone's trying to help each other out and work out how we can best do this. And I think that is what gives me so much hope for the future.
Oh, well, that's great that through this webinar too, that's the message we'll be giving to students, that, even if you felt a little bit disillusioned or sad at the end of the book, just know that, there's a lot of very passionate, clever people working on this. We can all do this together. So we'll share the video now, the online reading. The book obviously is available from all good bookshops, but we have put together an online reading so that people can access it online as well. So let's take a look at that.
Hi there, I'm Nicole Howie. I'm the River Detectives Coordinator at the North Central Catchment Management Authority. I'd love to share with you today a beautiful book by Meg Humphrys. She's written 2 books. Her first book, When Water Lost Her Way, is a lovely story exploring all of the forms of water, how water moves around, and all of the things that depend on it, both living and non-living. But today our focus is Meg's second book, Wave of Change. So I'd love to share that with you now. Wave of Change, written and illustrated by Meg Humphrys. Water danced through her forms as she always had. She swirled, tumbled and somersaulted across the sky. Melting, sweeping and seeping down into darkness, she was carried along by the waves of the ocean and lifted back to the vast skies again. But the landscape was changing, and so was the rhythm of her dance. The world around her began to call for help. A snowy owl cried, "Water, without your snow, I no longer blend into my surroundings. I feel so alone and afraid. Please build up your snow." An emperor penguin pleaded, "Water, your ice cracks beneath my feet. I need to keep this egg safe. Please strengthen your ice." Water tried to remain as snow and ice, but it was no use. She melted all the same. A coral reef urged, "Water, the algae have left, leaving my white, brittle remains. They can't survive your hot and murky waters. How will we shelter all the sea life on the reef? Please cool your water." The land begged, "Water, I'm so dry and thirsty. My skin is cracked. Without your rain, how will the plants grow? Please rain more." A mountain pygmy possum asked, "Water, the mountains are changing. The snow that keeps my burrow warm while I hibernate is melting before I'm ready to wake up. There is nowhere left for me to go. Please help." Migratory birds called from the skies, "Water, we are following your dance and the signs from nature as we always have, but your rhythm has changed, and when we arrive at our nesting places, the food is gone. What is happening?" Water knew her dance had changed before, but this felt different. Water thought, "My friend Old Tree will be able to help me understand why everything is changing." Old Tree looked different since Water's last visit. "What is happening to me, Old Tree?" she asked. "The world is calling for my help, but I can't seem to control the rhythm of my dance." Old Tree replied, "My dear, the balance we have had for thousands of years is shifting. Humans overuse our life stores and clear our wild places. The earth is heating up, the land is drying out, and hotter days place more stress on plants and animals, which are already struggling from the destruction of their homes. The warmer air gives heavier downpours and less frequent rain. Your ice melts more quickly and your seas are rising." "Oh, do the humans know what they are doing?" Water asked. But there was no time for an answer. A gust of wind blew the last seed from Old Tree, and it was carried on the wind across the sky. Old Tree took her last breath. Her life stores shriveled and rested on the earth. Water sank down from Old Tree's roots, overcome with sadness. Feeling helpless, Water drifted through her forms, hardly noticing she had been lifted to the sky, had fallen as rain, and had formed part of the ocean, lapping on the shore of a low-lying island. A child sat watching her and pleaded, "Please don't cover our island with your seas. This is our home." Water sadly told the child what Old Tree had said, and a tear rolled down the child's face. I wonder what you're feeling at this point in the story. Water thought of that seed from Old Tree and asked the child, "I have an idea. Can you help me?" The child replied, Oh, I hope so. But what could I do? And that's the last page. That's the end of our story. What could I do? Asked the child. So Meg's left us with a really interesting open-ended question there. We've noticed the ice is cracking, the snow is melting, the seas are rising, rainfall is changing. Things are changing, and I wonder why. What could you do? What could you do as an individual? What could you do as a family, as a school, or even as a community? It's time to start thinking. Start thinking. I believe in you. I believe in you, and I believe in us as a human race. We can do something to help. Let's start thinking and take some action.
So Natalia was really honest in saying, in terms of her reactions to the story, that it was lovely. But she did say it made me have a mix of feelings. The story told true problems that are happening in the world, and it really made me think that we should make a difference by doing little things. So I love that comment from her. I think she sums up the book. She sums it up to admit that yes, it is a bit shocking, and it's it really puts it right out there that these things are happening, but it's also inspiring. I think she definitely felt inspired, and I know that's what you hoped for from the book. And Fletcher asks, which I think you've already said in terms of your life and how you, as a mum, you think about climate change. But yeah, what's your overriding feeling? Are you feeling hopeful?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that hope is a nicer feeling to have as well.
Very much so.
Yes.
You have to be hopeful.
Yeah, and I think the other huge opportunity with having to address this problem that's coming to the forefront of most countries now, they're all focused on resolving and preparing for climate and developing climate resilience, is that in doing that, when we're addressing challenges with climate change and solutions, they're also going to fix other problems like air quality, nature repair, regenerating nature. We have to, and it's going to help us think longer term and change some of the ways we have been living, like as a whole, as a humanity on this planet. And so I think that's really exciting, that when we're tackling this, we can also tackle some of those other issues too.
Yeah, I love the thought of a world where things are greener and cleaner and more connected, and it's going to have spin-offs. It's a great way to feel. So, and Natalia also, she's very insightful because she's already also acknowledged that it was almost as though in the book you were writing down your own emotions and putting how you felt into the story. So similar to this page of the book, saying that water sank down from old trees' roots, overcome with sadness. She felt that, perhaps at times that's how you have felt, or that's how you imagine some people do feel at times.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And, I sit in big conferences where I'm hearing from the latest scientists talking about, ocean melt and things that are changing. And I feel really sad. But then I come home and I think about what I can do in my community to help and the little changes I can make, because I think all of our little changes are all little ripples and they add up to one big wave.
Absolutely. That's a nice way to put it. The ripple effect.
Yes. The ripple effect.
And Charlotte, just to share another comment, Charlotte commented, "I love the book and the way it warns us about the ice cracking and how the animals are losing their homes." So that was a nice little thought from Charlotte. And Fletcher liked the book because it really put it out there, he said. For those who didn't know about climate change, you can't say you don't know by the time you've read this book. It really puts it out there. And Xander said the book was really eye-opening. So these are all really lovely things that these grade 5 students have said. And to share this page, so we've already talked a little bit about it, but Elvin, Alfred and Chloe, they all commented that they really liked the ending. So Elvin did say, I liked how you had an open-ended question at the end because it really made me think. And you're right, it kind of feels a bit abrupt at the time, but then it's over to us, isn't it? It's what real life is. It's what are we going to do about it? How are we going to work together? So Alfred also said, the last sentence you ended with makes me wonder about all the possibilities to save the ocean. And Chloe liked how the child at the end said, how can I help? What could I do? As if you're saying to your readers, what are the little things that you could do to help? So yeah, I think that was a really effective ending. So it's definitely had its the right, it's been taken in the right way. These children definitely commented that was a discussion they went on to have at school after listening to the story. So that's lovely. Yeah. And although some children, they did say they would have liked some concrete specific suggestions, what can we do to help? So, I suppose, and you've already said that was your idea, was it, that, by making it open-ended, I'll stop sharing that now, it just made it more, I suppose, gave the book longevity because you don't want it to date, that these things have already been thought of. If someone reads this book in 5 years' time and I suppose you don't want to pigeonhole the solutions either. Yeah. Is there anything else to add around that choice to have such an open-ended finish?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think just that invitation to be a part of it and to think about it. And I think another challenge in the way that we think about the solutions is that they're going to be different in every local context. So in one area, for example, when we're talking about energy transition, you might have a lot more wind, or you might have hydroelectric power, or, it really depends on where you are and what's going on in your local environment as to what the right solutions are. So, and I think it's really just that invitation to come back to where you live and where you are and think about what that looks like in your home, in your school, in your community, as well. And there is a little statement at the end of the book and a reference to a website which has some really great resources. It's a US-based website, but it has a global perspective and covers a lot of solutions from all around the world, and it's all about resolving and solving the climate crisis in 10 years, sort of with an idea that if we all collectively focus on this and work together. And it's not just in the environment spheres. This is it across all industries, transport, fashion, like everywhere. There is something that everyone from wherever they work, whatever job, they have a role, and their workplace and their school and their community has a role.
So quite a few children, Jethro, Harvey, Xander, Lockie, Emmy, Matilda, River, they did all ask some specific questions about environmental issues, sort of what will happen if the ice melts completely, or, will there be any water left in future, or how long until climate change is irreversible? And they're all great questions, but rather than, answer those specifically in this chat, I thought we'll focus on that, creating hope and showing what is happening as we're moving forward and coming up with some solutions. So, because we know it's not children's job to fix these problems. It's nobody's job alone. And the very biggest problems, need very big solutions and very big brains and passion thinking about things that can be done at much higher levels than your average school and home. But there are things that we can all do. So I suppose we've come to that part of the webinar where we think a little bit about some things. I suppose if we start first with some things that you would suggest that are things that kids could do in their local school, in their local community, or even just simple things at home in their everyday lives.
Yeah, of course, there's lots. So in your home, I'll start there. That a lot of emissions, which is causing this problem, come from greenhouse gases from waste. So having your at-home compost bin and using that as a conditioner in your back garden is a huge contributor to reducing emissions, because when you have organic waste going into landfill, that becomes a significant source of methane gas emissions. So you can have a role in that at home. You might already have a green bin out the front anyway. There's a lot of councils that are rolling those out across the place. So just making sure that your organic waste is going into the green bin is really helping as well. There's another big area that we've been looking at in the water industry, which is heating water. So hot water use in your home is usually powered by either it's gas or electricity. And so actually having shorter showers with hot water, not only does it save the water, which goes through a whole treatment process, which also uses energy, but it also, so it reduces your water use from home, having a shorter shower, but it also reduces greenhouse gas emissions, because heating of water is actually it's 8% of Australia's emissions from heating water, not just in the home, but also in industrial big kind of factories and things. So that's another area in your own home that you can do. And likewise at your school, you can start having these conversations at school. Do you have a water saving device on your shower? You know, that is going to save a lot of emissions, and also money and power as well. So it's going to help in lots of areas and preserve water, which we need to do as well. So there's these, we call them a nexus, which means it's solving one part of a problem, but also another part of a problem by looking at, you know, a good solution, which is often around, you know, conserving or reducing use and changing your behaviour a little bit. I mean, still enjoy that warm shower and enjoy that water. It's important for that. But then, you know, just recognise that it's a valuable resource, and then, you know, using it wisely. Yes. So there are a couple of things there.
Yeah. Great. And I know that some of our schools listening will also be Resource Smart schools, and that's, you know, a really great program where they're learning about, what in the areas of waste, energy, biodiversity and water, and auditing their school's use and putting things in place to make sure that they're saving energy and waste, and ticking lots of amazing goals with that. So the two programs work really well together. So we've got a whole raft of students out there doing amazing things in, you know, sustainability education at school, which I find really, really heartening as an educator. And we know the power of pest to power. So we hope they're all going home then and taking those messages home to families and saying, why aren't we composting and why aren't we having a timer on our shower? So, yeah, I think the future is bright if this is the knowledge that our students are getting at school. And can you, I suppose, from your work in the water industry, it would be really interesting for us to find out at a higher level there what are some of the initiatives that are starting to come through to combat climate change?
Yeah, there's a lot, and it's really exciting in the water industry because they're a big emitter of emissions. So that means that there's a lot of opportunity to make a contribution to reduce those and to change the way that things have been done. So often in a water system, you'll have a water storage dam that's high up, kind of in the catchment area, and you'll have, you know, your town or city that's more coastal, low lying, and then you'll have a wastewater treatment plant which will collect all of that shower water, toilet water from your homes and treat the water and then discharge it to the ocean after they've cleaned up that water. So as I said earlier with the composting, the treatment of wastewater is actually a large source of greenhouse gas emissions. But there's some really exciting opportunities, and many utilities are already doing this, and some have plans on the way to do it. But it's about harvesting the gas, so the greenhouse gases that are coming from the wastewater treatment plant. They can be harvested. You can put a cover on lagoons and capture that gas, and then actually use that as an energy source to power the treatment plant. So that's one, it's called like a waste to energy or biogas, and you can run a turbine and generate electricity. You can share that heat, so that heat can go back to, say, a commercial business which is spending a fortune on heating water. You could provide them with, or already hot water from your process back.
Mm.
And that's also going to save a ton of electricity that they would have been using to heat up that water. There's also biosolids, so the solid material that goes into a wastewater treatment plant can become a soil conditioner, and it's full of really, phosphorus and nitrogen, things that farmers buy now that's mined and is expensive from overseas. There's these opportunities to use these resources locally to restore and help grow food and improve soil health and that sort of thing. There's also work going on with the opportunity to use recycled water to reinstate wetlands and provide flow for the environment when we're going to be in drought periods. So there is a lot of material. And so if you think about the energy that the food that we eat is energy, and then that goes and passes through us into our poo, and then it goes into a wastewater treatment plant. That energy can be recovered at that site and used to help power and help our communities thrive. And that is a really exciting opportunity. And that is how most water utilities are looking to reach their net zero, along with things like renewable energy generation. So there's a lot of people putting in solar, like you might have solar on your roof. This is solar that's like on their farmland or on their treatment lagoons. There's floating solar. Some have wind farms, wind turbines, and so using renewable energy to power their sites, as well as capturing and recovering all of the resources that are coming into their sites and using those and keeping them in use. So it's really about a whole circular thinking rather than the linear, which is like we'll take resources, use them, and then dispose of them. It's really challenging that mindset into a much more circular approach, and that can be done at the home scale within your home with your own composting and grey water, and it can also be done at the municipal, like at a water treatment plant scale and community scale. So it's really exciting.
Love that. Yeah, the circle just came to mind to me. It's often, well, we learn as kids, don't we, that you eat, you poo, and that's the end of it, but it's actually, just the start of producing something that can be used and fed back into the system. Yeah.
They're recovering cellulose from toilet paper. Like there's all kinds of things, recovering grit that can go into asphalt and roads. All of these sorts of materials that end up in our waste systems can be reused and recovered. And, using crushed up glass around fittings where they're putting embedded pipe instead of using fresh gravel that's been mined from somewhere, as an example. So it's about using recycled materials and really thinking, and for water as well, thinking about nature and using nature as a treatment step as well. So one of the exciting projects I was working on at Western Port Water, we had a floating wetland. So we were growing plants and they're taking in the nutrients. So they're cleaning the water naturally, and that's what they're doing. There's no energy use. It's just the sun. And then you harvest that material and you can use that to, plant up and recover a wetland site, or you can use that into a biochar process, which is a way to store the carbon, and it's like a cooking of that material, and it sequesters the carbon into this soil conditioner. So there's all these opportunities that are being looked at and being deployed now, and they're out there, and using algae and all these kinds of, these are nature-based solutions, they're called. And the water industry is increasingly looking at these kinds of solutions, as well as the more technical ones that
I love that, because I often think, any problem that you have can be found, a solution can be found in nature, even if it's a person problem, or, just watching how nature deals with things. I think if we're observant, so a lot of the answers are there. We just have to harness them, don't we? Do you want to share the website that we were talking about earlier? Had some great images there of some really cool, innovative things that are happening.
Yeah, so this is at regeneration.org solutions. Now, I love this one because if you think about it, I'm going to scroll you down, but it's a beautiful image right from the mountaintop. that takes you through all of the different types of solutions. And there's links here, and I'll click on a few and then you can have a look at home and have a greater look. But you'll see here bioregions. This is just a description about the different kinds of systems that we have and how nature recovery and repairing can help solve the climate crisis. There's boreal forests. They'll then have a link, and if you want to read more about them, I'll choose one when we get down to the cities that might be more familiar with our audience, and we can follow that to see. But fire ecology is one, and this is huge. This is happening with our traditional custodians here in Australia, where we're looking at cool burning, and it's a great way to manage, but not only manage invasive species and weeds, but also to reduce hot bushfire risk and things like that. So it's a really important climate resilience measure for our country, especially peatlands, wetlands, we've said. So there's a huge opportunity there in we've lost so many wetlands, and restoring those, and pollinators, animal integration, wildlife corridors. So I'm going to get down to the cities, and I'll click on one there. We've got wind, which I'm sure everyone's pretty familiar with, solar, grasslands, grazing ecology, so how you're managing animals in the landscape if anyone has a farm or goes out to see farms. I love this one, because this is like, let's reimagine our cities. So let's think about, and not only does all of this lovely growing nature on city walls, it cools down our cities. Our cities are going to get really hot. They already are, and concrete's such a hot material, but this is going to cool and make them more livable, and provide resilience, create biodiversity in our cities. Electric vehicles, I think people are starting to see those everywhere, different ways to be more mobile, urban farming. So I'll just click on one to show. So say, let's say here, net zero cities. If you're interested in what a city could look like when it's zero emissions, you can click on that and then click on this link. And it gives you, some of it might be a little bit technical, but if you scroll down, there's action items, and then it has them for individuals, and it also has it for groups, and then it has companies and governance, and key players. So a lot of this, look, there's a Melbourne, Australia example. This is a global lens, and organisations and individuals. So there's so much there to have a great look at. But
are some of those links showing, some really cool things that have been done in those places?
Yeah, absolutely. Great. And this website, it's from the book Regeneration, and the book's fantastic as well, and it's all about solutions, and it's really saying, we have all of them now, just like you said earlier, Nicole. We know it's all there. We've got to kind of come together and make this change, because it's a big step change for us in how things have been going at a big scale. But all of the solutions are here. You can have a really good look. You can create your own punch list in some of them. So it'll, a list for home, for actions you can do. Great. There's some really great resources here. And this is, like I said, more like if urban farming's another great one. We need to, growing food in our cities. So
I love those pictures of using, all the bits of the land. There's so many bits of land just covered in concrete now that needn't be. We could use the soil, like use it for growing things.
Absolutely. There's so much here, and there's a lot of other local things, and I'm sure your program and has all of these things as well. This is just a really nice, neat, it's kind of got that global. So if you want to think about how different areas are being tackled, they've done things like low carbon housing. So if we're growing sustainable wood, using wood to build housing is storing that carbon. It's about thinking about,
every bit of the process.
Every bit, fashion, it's got everything from heat pumps, to some really, and it's kind of presented in quite a beautiful way. So it's a great.
It is, even just the image is a place where I would want to live. It just looks great. And
So it's a
imagine
good
just
one to start.
well-being, you know, just from a personal day-to-day living perspective, it would just feel nice to live in a place like that, wouldn't it? And see that green. And we all do
absolutely.
better when nature is around us, and that would help that connection too, wouldn't it? So building that connection can only be a good thing. That's a beautiful website. What a great resource.
Yeah.
It's definitely more to explore there for any teachers or students listening.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I believe you've got a PowerPoint there, Meg, that you can share with some specific examples of the initiatives being employed at the moment in the water industry that particularly our secondary students might be really interested in getting their teeth into.
Yes. Thanks, Nicole. I'd love to share. I'll just share my presentation now. Just go. So this is a great website here, which I'm not sure if you'll see from earlier, but it's a fantastic one to look through global scale of solutions all across in different environments, cities, landscapes, the work. So really recommend having a good look through that. And there was a bit of a brief on that just earlier. But in terms of let's take it back to the water industry. So these are providers of water and sewer services to communities. So all around Australia, the water sector, most utilities have a net zero target, which is when they want to reach net zero emissions. And they're in green, we've got from 2030 or sooner, in blue from 2031 to 40, and in orange from 2041 to 50. So there are significant plans underway all across Australia and New Zealand. And what I've shown here is the pathway that I worked on when I was at Western Port Water of how we would get there. And, you know, it's being powered by renewable energy, reducing our emissions, reaching our 2030 target. And then there's even a beyond zero carbon, which is when we're in a state where we're regenerating nature. So we're in that nature positive and carbon positive space. So there's plans going on all across, and what it looks like is from everything from powering our sites with renewable energy to having efficient sites, so running things really carefully and managing the energy balance. So when you're getting sun in, powering your more intensive equipment then, and then using, say, biogas, which is recovered from wastewater process for overnight. So thinking about your site and managing that as a 100% renewable site, but also thinking about the broader context of your site in your community. And that's when you start to think about how can we reduce emissions from other businesses. So it's Renewable Organics Network here. We have Barwon Water are working on that, and it's a fantastic initiative where they're looking at bringing in those organic waste that I spoke to earlier that can be big sources of emissions in landfill, recovering the energy from that waste and using that, whether it be on the treatment plant site or powering electricity and putting that renewable energy back into the grid. So there's really exciting things in this recovering waste to energy. Also, providing soil conditioners from biosolids, which is a really a waste product from the treatment process. It has valuable nutrients in it that can help restore soils. You have large-scale solar farms going in that are powering energy behind there. Oh, sorry, I flicked through a bit.
That's okay.
And then there's also the nature part, which is really important as well, which is, I spoke to it a little bit earlier, but thinking about how we can use nature and natural processes to also filter and treat water, because that is not requiring energy or concrete, which actually has a large amount of embodied carbon emissions in it as well. So how we can sort of renaturalize the processes and use, you know, floating wetland systems and things like that are becoming much more common, and that we're actually they're studying at Western Port Water on this site the greenhouse gas emission fluxes after they've installed a wetland to really kind of validate with the science. So it's a really exciting project. zero emissions transport, so moving to EV, but also thinking about what's the extra demand for energy from when you move to an electric vehicle and how you're going to manage that. So there's a lot of thinking about making sure your renewable energy supply is going to be able to meet that increase in demand from electric vehicles, changeover, these sorts of things. So these are all of the key kind of projects that we were working on at Western Portwater, and some, more examples down the side there. And this is really just sort of showing, this is the floating wetland system, which is set up on a wastewater lagoon. So the big roots here, they're just like a filter, and they're filtering that water, creating the biofilm, and they're taking up all the nutrients from the water. And so that's really great, because then that means this water is more safe to enter the environment, and it's being cleaned up more, and
doesn't need as much energy in artificial cleaning methods.
Yeah, well, that's the idea. This is a pilot trial site where we're testing it on this lagoon, and the idea is that then, and I sent a YouTube link about this project too, to think about how we might scale that to rather than, so this is your traditional wastewater lagoon. It's just like a big bowl, really, with a liner on top, like a big depression, like a big farm dam, you could think about it. But rather than setting up something like that when we need to expand the plant, we've been thinking about how could we set this up as a wetland system and have plants treat the water and treat it to even a higher quality than what we would have had. But then you're also creating all that biodiversity and habitat, and then you just cut the plants and they will reshoot again. So to help kind of move those nutrients out, and then from there you can put that plant material into a biochar process, which can then go back into a soil conditioner. So there's all of this sort of thinking, that circular thinking, which is really about designing out waste, keeping your resources in use, and regenerating nature. So this is really that sort of circular model that we move to. And here I put this up because this is something that a lot of water utilities are doing now as well. When they're putting up their big solar farms, they're also thinking about, well, what can I do below them? So you can have biodiversity, or you can grow food. And this is an example from the US. So when we're sort of making this transition, there is a big part of technology in that transition, with all the renewable energy we need to replace coal. But then as part of that, how do we build in nature as well? Because we really need to be recognising and thinking that the biodiversity crisis is just as great as the climate crisis, and we need to think about those together. So that's sort of some really great thinking around there. And again, this urban greening landscapes in cities. And this is this model we developed at WASA, where we're thinking that water is really at the centre of all of these opportunities as we transition to a nature positive, a net zero, and a circular economy. So it's really saying that water is what connects this all, and water is a huge enabler that, for all of these systems to thrive. If we're planting trees to sequester carbon, they need water to grow. Everything needs water.
Nothing survives without water. So it's the pathway to creating all of these amazing opportunities, and underneath them too. I love that multi-layered approach that there's just so many more things you can do in the system to value add. Or one of our last webinar that we did, we interviewed Professor David Lindenmayer. So he was looking at the move to make the most of farm dams. And that was, a similar way of thinking, that, we have these farm dams, they're for water storage and they're for stock drinking needs, but why not make them biodiversity hotspots as well? They're there, and it doesn't take a lot to just rethink to make them these amazing little spots that are stepping stones across a landscape for biodiversity. So I think it's the message I'm getting loud and clear is working smarter. We have to work hard, but working smarter is the real thing, isn't it? And I love that. There's so many creative solutions, and I think students can be part of that, can't they? Because students have a can-do attitude. I think when you're young, you don't see the barriers. And I know when I went to the Resource Smart Schools Awards at the MCG in earlier this year. They did a drama activity where they got students to do a static display with their bodies of a museum exhibit in 2050 or 70 or something. And yeah, it was all of these things like, oh yeah, look at that petrol-driven car. Remember the days when we used to all drive petrol-driven cars? And yeah, these students were coming up with these amazing ideas that only young people can. Yeah, because it's just the world's your oyster. And it's, yeah, I love this change that we're seeing in. I love hearing about it, Meg, that, yeah, it's very reaffirming that to know that there are some really clever, passionate people out there, thinking of these things through, and not just one solution, but how that solution can provide opportunities in other ways to other parts of the picture. It's great to hear about all of that. That probably brings us to the end of our chat. We could go on forever, but it's been really positive. I've just loved the message that we're sending out there to listeners, that there is lots happening. There is always hope. If we're listening to the land and listening to water and watching nature and talking to others, I think we can come up with a better future. I think the future's in good hands. I really feel that now.
Yes.
So thank you very much for your passion and your expertise, and giving us a little insight into what's happening in the water industry. They are all very exciting things. So we will watch that space with interest. Thank you for joining us. And is there any more books in the wings, or you're always thinking?
We'll see. I'm always thinking, but it takes a bit of time. So nothing that's coming out anytime soon, but I'll let you know.
Yeah, lovely. It's been lovely having you with us. Thanks so much, Meg.
Thank you. See you later. Bye.